Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to City Hall, the home of the San Francisco Giants. All right. Well, today we have a very important piece of legislation to be signed. Let me begin at the outset. There is a movement going on in the city. It's called the sharing economy. It's something that not only have we been watching with the role of technology and the ability to connect people up with better on-time information and resources and the ability to just connect with more and more people. But taking place in our city and cities across the country is a movement called the sharing economy. And that is based upon a very simple understanding that in order to be successful in America, you don't have to own everything. As I grew up as a child of 6 kids in the city of Seattle, I had to share, and I learned very quickly that I couldn't own sometimes even my own pair of socks, that we had to share in order to survive, in order to succeed. We had to build a family economy around understanding each other's needs and trying to help that out. And of course, we had to share a lot of information. Well, technology has brought about, I think, a huge revolution in the ability to understand what we're doing in the economy, and with the tremendous interest in people in this city to say that we can also succeed in this economy. We're already doing it. We have all kinds of ride-sharing applications to get people so they don't have to own, and what I usually say, a second and third car in this city. They can get around, get all their tasks done. We got great companies like City Car Share, Zipcar, and others. And then you've got companies that are even having scooters be able to share, electric scooters all around the city, not having, again, to depend upon any particular mode or owning their own car, along with, of course, a great muni system, great transportation system that we invest some serious monies in, and of course, Prop A, I got to put that in there, that we got to be able to pass. We have task sharing, and now we've got the ability for people to do space sharing. And I have behind me a great group of enthusiasts, people who wanted to join this economy, find ways to do it, invite more people to this economy just by sharing information and space that they may have. This is the first effort in the history of this space sharing movement that we've been able to regulate this. And I want to thank Board President David Chiu and all the supervisors, Supervisor Scott Wiener here, Supervisor Katie Tang. I know we'll be joined by Supervisor Malia Cohn and others to bring a strong majority to pass this legislation in an attempt to regulate an industry and also to make sure that going forward we collect some good revenue for the city as well. When we invite people to be part of this economy, I think the city wins as well. It's a win-win-win for everyone. I want to thank all the speakers today, representatives from the different companies, their employees, their people that are living here and working here that are finding ways to make it successful for themselves. This is, I think, a great story coming out of our city, is that we have an economy that shares the ability to have space, rides, tasks, more and more. And I'll tell you what, often, the larger companies are doing the same thing. If you look at what's happening in the bio-life sciences world, you'll already understand that they've been sharing with laboratories in order to be successful. Great big pharmaceutical companies find the ability to have their laboratories shared with each other in order to bring the pharmaceutical products out. That's yet another example in another industry. This is happening literally in virtually all the industries. So I join this group in celebrating this occasion. We're regulating. We're going to eventually get a lot more revenue here going forward, and that will be great for the city to support all of the other services that the Board of Supervisors and I know that will be coming at us continuously in the city. So with that, let me introduce to you the author and sponsor of this legislation and our Board President, David Chiu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. After 2 years of incredibly hard work, of countless meetings, of countless testimony, and a lot of discussion here in the city, we are finally at this point, and I want to thank everyone behind me, and San Francisco, thank you for sharing. I want to take a moment and very specifically thank some of the stakeholders that we worked with. We worked with tenant organizations, we worked with landlord representatives, small property owners, we worked with the hotel and tourism community, including both labor and management. We worked with neighborhood advocates all over the city. We worked with many city departments, including the Planning Department, the Department of Building Inspection, the City Attorney, their staff, and commissioners. I want to thank my aide, Amy Chan, who worked on this for 2 years of her life. I want to thank our colleagues on the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, and in particular, the first 3 colleagues to step up to support this legislation, Supervisors Wiener, Tang, and Malia Cohen. And I want to take a moment and also thank an individual who's not with us today. Ted Gullickson was one of the very first leaders in the tenants community that we worked with over 1.5 years ago. He stood with me when we introduced this legislation in April, and I know he is here in spirit. And then I want to thank the thousands of individuals from all over our city who are our seniors, our working families, our students, our artists, our tenants, our landlords, our homeowners, who represent the amazing diversity of home sharers here in San Francisco. Thank you for being with us today. I am very proud of our San Francisco Board of Supervisors. In recent years, we have worked together to resolve extremely difficult land use situations and issues relating to CEQA reform, legalizing in-laws, condo conversions, and we have done it again. Why are we here? We're here because everyone knows that the status quo with regards to short-term rentals is not working. We've seen an explosion in short-term rentals, thousands every evening. In our city, technically, it has not been legal, and yet there has been no regulatory or enforcement structure. For years, we have not had a solution. Everyone agrees that we need a different approach, but until today, we have not acted. The heart of our legislation has been about addressing housing affordability. How can we all afford to live in our city? Without changes in local law, short-term rentals has made housing affordability more difficult and more easy at the same time, and we need city policies that reflect that. On the one hand, current practices have pushed many San Franciscans out of our city. Whether you are a landlord Ellis acting an entire building for full-time vacation rentals, or a tenant who has entered into multiple leases and engaged in full-time beds and breakfasts, when the mayor signs this legislation, we will have a regulatory and enforcement structure that says no to you. If you're using sites like Airbnb, HomeAway, VRBO, or others to allow housing to be used around the clock as vacation rentals, you will face $1,000 per day fines or potential criminal penalties for multiple offenses. On the other hand, we've heard from thousands of home sharers who have been struggling San Franciscans who are struggling to afford to live in our great city. Seniors and students, families and artists, workers from all over San Francisco. Our legislation says that if you are a permanent resident, defined as someone who lives in our city at least 9 months of the year, and you play by the rules, you get liability insurance in case anything happens. You register with the city if there are any neighborhood complaints. You are abiding by rent control laws and life safety laws, and you pay your full share of taxes, you will be allowed to continue to afford to live in San Francisco. I want to thank the Planning Commission and our Board of Supervisors for having made dozens of amendments to our legislation to increase enforcement, to ensure that we're protecting affordable housing, to ensure building safety and maintaining our neighborhood quality of life. But at the end of the day, this is about how San Francisco, once again, leads in teaching the world and showing the world how it is that we share. Today, we have 2 of thousands of home sharers who are here to tell some of their stories. The first has the name that sounds like a baseball player. Rodolfo Cancino is up. Thank you, Rodolfo, if you could say a few words.
As a senior and a former teacher, I'm very proud to be standing right here. We began sharing our home to meet people from around the world and to add more security to our retirement. It allowed me to fix my teeth, and it allowed us to help our son with his graduate school debt. Not only has home sharing helped us, but it has greatly contributed to the success of all the small businesses in the Western Addition, as well as spreading that success to all the neighborhoods in the city, not centered downtown. And it has introduced tourists to other parts of the city that they would never have experienced. One example is Eddie's on Divisadero Street. A couple told us that having gone to Eddie's for breakfast their first morning, they returned to Eddie's every morning thereafter. Without home sharing, we would never have been able to share our guests' milestones, such as a couple becoming engaged, honeymooners, first visits for grandparents, parents touring colleges with their children, marathoners, and families going home after a successful surgery. Supervisor Chiu said that at a recent meeting, Supervisor Chiu said at a recent meeting that he was initially opposed to the idea of home sharing until he heard the stories of how home sharing was helping people stay in their homes and in our city. It has meant a lot to me to be a participant in the legislative process and to speak on legislative changes that will have a tremendously positive and life-changing effect for thousands of home sharers across the city. We thank Supervisor Chiu for persevering in the face of strong, very strong opposition. Thank you also to Supervisors Breed, Cohen, Farrell, Kim, Tang, and especially Supervisor Wiener, who chaired the Land Use Committee. Thank you, Mayor Lee. Thank you all.
Again, there are so many people to thank from the mayor on down, but we have another person representing the thousands of home sharers here in San Francisco, Nancy Niederhauser.
Good morning, Mayor Lee, President Chiu, fellow hosts, and esteemed guests. I'm honored to tell my story as a host on Potrero Hill one last time as we witness Mayor Lee sign legislation to legalize select short-term rental activities in San Francisco. Seeing our democratic process in action and participating in that process have been an inspiration. I want to thank our Board of Supervisors for their thoughtful deliberations on this complex legislation, their attention to all of our emails and hundreds of stories about how sharing our homes allows us to stay in them, benefit our lives, our neighborhoods, and our city. I thank in particular President Chiu for his masterful navigation of our city culture and politics, Supervisor Wiener for his skillful advocacy, and my District 10 Supervisor Malia Cohen for her votes and for her impassioned remarks at the last board meeting. I also want to thank Amy Chan for her huge contribution to this endeavor. I must also acknowledge Peter Kwan for his invaluable leadership to our San Francisco home sharers community. I arrived in San Francisco 42 years ago, and I've lived on Potrero Hill ever since. I bought a 2-unit building in 1975, which I could never afford to purchase today. I rent the second unit long-term, and I contribute to affordable housing in this city, historically charging well below market rate, because I want to make my space available to someone like myself, a regular person who was a retired social worker. Over the past 3 years, I've offered a small guest room with private bath in my home 10 to 15 days per month, only when I am present. The income makes a huge difference in my retired standard of living. It has been a lifesaver this year with medical expenses. It secures my ability to remain in my home and in San Francisco because I am spared depleting my savings so quickly. Thus, I can postpone selling the house, which is my main asset. The income also literally allows me to subsidize my long-term tenants' rent. I carefully screen my guests since they are in my private space with me. They are an asset to my neighbors. They are wonderful people who are respectful, quiet, and considerate. They bring value also to our local businesses. They have been very appreciative of the home sharing experience, and they love our city. I cherish my neighborhood, and I welcome the safeguards contained in the law against those who give our activity a bad name. I have faith that our planning department can and will enforce those provisions. This endeavor has introduced me to wonderful people from around the world and from San Francisco, especially my fellow hosts, who truly believe that we can belong anywhere. This experience has made me feel a greater sense of community, pride, and belonging in my own city. I'm grateful to have been part of this historic initiative. Thank you.
Ready?
There you go.
All right.